Hi folks, my name is Adam and I like to make tiny nerdy things. And continuing with the Poketober Pokemon card theme, today I'm going to be making a personal favorite, Bulbasaur. Now sure, I could have stuck with the Final Evolution theme and gone with Venusaur, but when it comes right down to it, who's going to say no to this little guy? As always, the first thing I need to do is make a card so that I can figure out what size to make my model. Now this is the third card that I've made, and it tickles me to no end that for each of the videos I get a slew of comments angrily condemning me for ruining an original first edition card. Maybe at some point I should record the whole process. Maybe start a YouTube channel or something like that. I don't know, an idea for another day. At any rate, with the card more or less finished, I can get cracking on making a chubby tulip lizard. I'll start by making the torso, which is just kind of a malformed egg, essentially. Then once the clay's been cured, I can add some teeny tiny chubby legs. And then these will get blended into the body and I can add a little bit of detail, though not much detail. Bulbasaur's legs are adorably chubby straight lines with pointy claws at the bottom. I will, however, add the teeniest bit of shape to his feet to poke some tiny holes, and then I can make a dozen tiny pointy claws. I like to pre-bake things like claws and teeth so they keep their shape when I press them into place. The easiest way to do this is to make my tiny claws and then place them into a silicone cup before blasting them with a heat gun for a couple of minutes. Once they've had time to cool down, they should be hard enough to press into place without deforming them, and when I bake the entire model at the end, they'll cure properly alongside the other clay. Finally, I really want to highlight just how chubby Bulbasaur is, so I'm going to add a whole bunch of wrinkles along his legs. And that's pretty much a Bulbasaur body, which means it's time to give him a head. The aluminium core both reduces the overall weight of the body and keeps me from using too much clay. Aluminium is pretty cheap, whereas clay is not, so the more of that I can use, the better. And once I've got my head more or less shaped out, I can stick it onto the body with a little bacon bond before blending it in. Now I would like to apologize for the next 30 seconds, since in an effort to make his face the correct shape, I inadvertently made a Jack Skellington Momo-esque monstrosity. As it turns out that the only thing more horrifying than Bulbasaur without eyes is a Bulbasaur without eyelids.
I will eat your soul.
Fortunately, once you start rounding the eyes out, adding the eyebrow and the epicanthic fold, things start shifting from horrible back to adorable. In fact, once you get the little cone-shaped ears in place and poke some tiny holes for his nostrils, it's actually looking not just good, but good enough. In fact, the only thing that's left to do is smooth it all out with quick brushing of isopropyl alcohol to remove any fingerprints and help blend in the unsightly seams. Then into the oven to cure the clay, and it's blue glove time. I want to give Bulbasaur a tiny bit of texture, and I found the combination of textured nitrile gloves and Sculpey oven-baked clay adhesive works an absolute treat. I'll dab a little bacon bond onto the tip of my finger and then poke in the texture. Once you throw it in the oven, the bacon bond cures clear, but it will really stand out when it comes to the painting. However, at this point, we've got the sore, and now we need the bulb. To make the bulb, I made a clay onion, and then I carved a little square into the top so that I could add some leafy sections around the edge. Then I curled the leafy sections down to make it look a little bit more bulb-like before adding some lines to mark out each of the petals. Then it's just a case of slamming the bulb onto the sore's back. Then a coat of alcohol to smooth it all out, and I could add lots of lines to make it look leafy and lovely. Now, I could have called it done there, but I really wanted to give a little bit of action to the model, so I'm going to give Bulbasaur some vines and say that despite what's written on the card, he's also learned Vine Whip. Basically, the vines are just really long wormy dealies that loop up and out and then get adorable little leafy protrusions on the end. Then once they've been adequately smoothed and positioned, well, he's done and it's time to make a base. I really want to incorporate the card into each of these models and have it seem like the character is bursting up and out of the card. I had the Gyarados card on a wave and the Charizard card was on fire, so the plan with this one is to have a small grassy forest holding the card up and Bulbasaur bursting out of the center. To that end, I'm going to make a lumpy dirt hamburger patty out of clay and make it in such a way that it fits perfectly to the card. Then I'm going to take this very fancy collector's edition rock I found outside and ever so gently apply texture. The grass is going to be made out of clay worms that get smooshed and shaped and then attached around the outside of the hamburger patty. Then repeat this process until I've got a nice mix of grasses and ferns. Now I will need to bake this to cure the clay, and I'm not foolish enough to think that baking a paper card is a good idea, so I've cut the center out of the card, and I'm going to make a square platform that Bulbasaur will stand on. Now, being a man of my word, I've baked my Tiki mask, so all I need to do is cut the square platform out so that I can remove it from the base. I want to add a whole bunch of grass, ferns, and vines growing up and out of the missing artwork, and I want it spilling over the edge onto the card, so having this section removable is important. Then a quick test fit to make sure it all lines up, and I can start adding the grass around Bulbasaur's feet. Once my card feels adequately overgrown, I can carefully remove the Bulbasaur base and bake it separate from the card before moving on to my painting. The painting is pretty straightforward. The veiny hamburger patty gets a nice coating of dirt brown, and then the lettuce top gets a nice leafy green. I wanted to use up some of my cheap Poundland paint, so it took me a surprisingly long time to get a nice even coat of green. It did, however, make adding a bit of shading easier since I was able to apply a pretty thick layer of yellow and green on top, before blending it in without any noticeable streaks. Then a quick dry brush on the base to make my dirt look dirtier, and a little dark green to make those veins look a little bit vinier. The grassy platform under Bulbasaur gets the exact same love and appreciation as the hamburger base, and then I can get to painting the little lettuce dinosaur himself. I started with a very blue before deciding the blue was too blue, and I repainted it a greener greenish blue, thinking that this worked pretty well. Then I add a little black and blue to the greener greenish blue hue to get me the color for his markings. Finally, after the blue hue, I chose to eschew my crappy Poundland paints and used my fancy paints to paint his spinal onion green. This only took one coat to get perfect coverage, and I was immediately reminded why I want to get through those crappy paints. It is, however, a bit monotonal in its color, so I'm going to blend a couple lighter greens in to give it a little tasty variation. Then I'm on to painting all the rest of the smaller details. And with everything painted, I'm ready to assemble my Paleo-Diet hamburger, starting with a burger patty covered in lettuce, a tasty first edition cardboard card, a quick drizzle of hot glue condiment, and finally a Bulbasaur garnish. And with that, we are on to the Glamour Shots. There you have it, folks. I hope you like this one, as Bulbasaur is easily one of my favorites. Speaking of my favorites, a big thank you to the wonderful people over on Patreon who help support this channel and contribute to the continuation of tiny nerdy things. A special thank you to my newest patrons, Artsy Fartsy Chell, Full Featureitis, Doppelpunkt Dev, Luke McKillen, Raymond Mira Klinge, Sheena McGinnis, Brianna Maeve, Stickyfoot Gecko, and Tonya Malone. If you'd like to help out, then consider subscribing, hitting that like button, commenting, and sharing this video with all of your friends. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Cheers.